2, 1, record. Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981, now celebrating our 43rd year. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024 in the Gregorian calendar, and it is the 17th day of the 5th Israelite Hebrew month of Av in the Hebrew Israelite calendar year 5784. Mary, I'm doing a program now. Okay, that's my 3-year-old granddaughter. All right, welcome to episode. Well, what episode are we on? We're up to episode 26 of our monthly Root and Branch Association Ancient Roots Mothering, Roots, Nettles and Sage seminar with Madam Co-Chairs. I only recognize two categories of reality. They're chairmen and Madam Co-Chairs. I don't recognize any other category. So we welcome our Madam Co-Chairs in alphabetical order, Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin of the Lower Galilee in Israel, Mrs. Gilla Weiss of Boca Raton in Florida, and Mrs. Chava Dagan from the Northern Negev, who was with us in spirit, but must be having some internet connection problems. Hopefully will join us later. So our Roots, Nettles and Sage seminar is part of our Root and Branch Association Limited 5th Israelite Monarchy. Please see the biblical book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 44 for that reference. Henry Dunster College of Jerusalem Israel Honors Program seminars. Henry Dunster was the first president of Harvard College, willed into existence as an idea in 1636 by the Massachusetts General Assembly of America's Puritan Pilgrim forefathers. Our dream, we are replanting the old Harvard in the New Jerusalem and are so pleased to offer you world-class programming with people who really know their subject matters, such as Gilla, Rivkah, and Chava. And we welcome their guests from the United States, Israel, and possibly other countries as well. Please support their work. The links will be below. And please support our work to build our Henry Dunster College and Hebrew Bible-based broadcasting network from Jerusalem, Israel, to honor the God-land Torah and people of Israel and all humanity. And I want to thank the small and growing number of people who are doing just that. Thank you very much for your support. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to, in alphabetical order, Mrs. Asoulin and Mrs. Weiss. And now, in alphabetical order by first name, Gilla and Rivkah, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Lo Aryeh. That was really precise and eminently fair. First name and last name, alphabetical order. Lo Aryeh, a lion for our people. Please, please, please check out his work and the work of many of my friends and yours that collaborate with Lowell to speak about a great many topics through Root and Branch Association. Please, please, please check them all out. Amazing, amazing information there. Okay, welcome, distinguished guests. I'm so happy to see some friends here today. That's wonderful. And Chava is on her way, Gilla. So, and there she is. Look at that. She's already here.
Hey, Chava.
So, oh, wait, I think I messed up. Hang on. Something I did. Okay, fine. Sorry about that. Hopefully, Lo Aryeh can pin up Chava once her camera's on. Okay, so today, welcome. So exciting to finally be discussing a topic that we have put off for probably 2 years on this show, something that I am asked, and certainly Chava and Gilla as well, about so often, and that is lice. Lice. We are often asked, how can you naturally deal with lice? Or a lot of times we see parents who don't deal with lice, which is very different than in North America, where the school nurse will kind of, if there's a report of lice, all the students get checked once, twice a year, whatever it is. And when a child has lice, they are sent home from school, they stay home, and it's the parent's job to make sure that lice is out of the hair. The child goes back into school, and the school nurse checks before the child's admitted into the classroom, checks for nits, checks for lice. What are nits? Nits are the eggs from lice. What are lice? Well, lice are little bugs that feed on the blood of humans and other animals, or humans and animals, humans and others, because I don't subscribe to the belief that humans are animals, though sometimes we act like it. Okay, so we've got, lice. It's something akin to a flea, maybe, that you've seen on animals. For those who've never had to deal with lice, little tiny thing. You can see it with the naked eye. You can look up pictures online if you want to get some good graphics. It's also common to have itchiness in your scalp when you discuss the topic of lice. So if you find yourself itching while we talk about it, know that this is a known psychosomatic kind of reaction to discussing lice, and that's okay. It's to be expected. Just like when someone yawns, it's contagious. Someone else starts yawning. Okay, so there's some interesting things. We're going to get into lice from a historical perspective, Torah perspective, and of course the practical, how do you get rid of lice naturally? What do you do? And especially, what do you do in a place like Israel where there is no, school nurse? I mean, again, this is, the three of us are homeschoolers, but there is no school nurse who's at the school making sure that the children are lice free. Basically, you could deal with your child and then send your child to school or to play with friends or to the park or whatever, and they just keep getting it over and over because a lot of parents don't know how to get rid of it or have interesting belief systems about why they shouldn't get rid of it. Which I'll mention quickly here and then turn it over to my esteemed friends and colleagues. But I remember someone telling me about a Rebbitzin who gave a lecture about why it's important to not do anything when your children have lice. She gave a lecture about how by the lice, what's the word I'm looking for? Parasites. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a type of parasite. So by the lice feeding off of the blood of your child, or of course, if you're an adult, anyone can get lice, anybody, babies, newborn babies, the elderly, will cover all that. But her claim was that it renews the blood because the lice, which are almost microscopic, they're so small, they are seen with the naked eye, but they're really tiny because they're biting all over, and they're getting blood circulation to the head, and it's so healthy, and it's one of God's gifts to us or something. With all due respect to this Rebbitzin, who I've never met, I haven't heard the lecture. This sounds like one of the most bonkers BS excuses for not dealing with your kids' head lice, but by all means, I'm happy to be educated if anyone knows the source of that and wants to connect me to the Rebbitzin. These little microscopic bites all over not only do not renew the blood, but these are parasites, and they for the child or the adult, whoever's experiencing this, it's itchy. There can be reactions, bumps, redness, irritation. Obviously it spreads, it's not, there's no known health benefit to keeping lice in your child's hair and spreading it to others. So, Chava and Gilla, maybe we can talk a little bit about the historical connection between the Jewish people and lice, or the climate of Israel, the Shoah, things like this, and lice. So let's turn it over.
So I'm happy to start and then hand it over to Chava. So I'm just going to start with, hello, everybody. Lice are biblical. They've been with us, obviously, since the beginning. And just go to the Torah, go to the Bible, and it's right there in Exodus. And it's, one of the plagues, the first plague, that the Jews have a connection to lice. So we're told that God told Moshe, to command Aaron, to hit the dust. And the dust turned into millions, trillions of lice. So we get the fact that it was lice, or at least we think it was lice, because the Hebrew word for lice is kina or kenim, and that's how we translate it into lice. However, back in the plague time, the people actually had body lice and they itched like crazy. They probably had head lice too. It was just an all over thing. And the animals were covered in lice too. So we today are very blessed. We are going to discuss only head lice. Just keep it on the head, you know. Jews were blamed for Black Plague in many places in Europe in the Middle Ages and the 1300s. Black Plague was often blamed on lice, not rice, lice. And the Jews were actually blamed for that. So they have this connection as well. And then go to Israel and, you know, you have a lot of dust and sand, and just for whatever reasons, it's a very fertile, conducive place for, you know, lice to live. However, I did do some research, and while body lice can live, not connected to the source, you know, in cloth, furniture, and stuff, head lice do not survive more than a day. So really, people say to me, okay, then how come we keep getting it? And we're going to address that here as well. Part of that is because of a lot of the lice treatments do not address the reproduction cycle and do not get to the eggs. But when it comes to Jews and the Holocaust and lice and the connections, I want to hand that over to Chava.
Okay. So our connections. We actually live also in Israel, in the south, in the desert, in the sand, in the heat. We have dealt with lice. Our animals have dealt with lice. I live on a farm. And I have actually, I'm going to go back a little bit out of Israel and out of the heat. I lived in Sri Lanka for almost 3 years, and it's a jungle, and it's hot, and it's humid, and it rains all the time. We lived in a jungle. Lice was a thing there, but it wasn't a thing. We in the Western world put this major stigma on lice, which is understandable when you think about, you know, oh, I don't want to get it. Oh, I don't want it in my house. And of course, but we lived with it in Sri Lanka, and we made it a social bonding time. People might freak out, but this is how we did it. We would sit in line one after the other, and give an hour, and all the women would just sit and pick lice out of the one in front of them's hair. We used a comb, we used our fingers, and we laughed and probably gossiped and told jokes and bonded and shared wisdom. From there, I learned it wasn't such a stigma. It's a mental thing in our own heads that we have put it on the lice. But if you come out of that situation and go into other cultures, it really isn't. And at first I freaked out when I got to Sri Lanka and I had lice, and that everyone else had lice, and oh my gosh, because I'm coming from America and we don't do that. But then you kind of get into this thing where it's just part of social being and communication and spending time with each other. Everyone had it and no one cared. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that it's a totally different frame of mind. And I'm not saying everyone should just accept it and let it be and have them crawl all over you. No, but we can take the stigma away and just practically deal with this in the way that, well, we'll go through all of that right now. As far as Israel is concerned, there have been a history of it since whenever, from the beginning. My husband grew up here, and he always tells stories of how the girls came to school, and you could imagine a class of, 25, 30 people, half of them are girls, long hair, and their mothers every morning would pour gasoline or kerosene over this long, beautiful hair and send them off to school. Imagine learning in a situation like that where half the class is reeking of gasoline. Certainly not a good way to deal with it. Definitely didn't get rid of what you needed to get rid of. And it was bothering everyone around them. But that is one of the older traditional Israeli ways of dealing with it. Since then, we've learned some more, and now we have better ways of conquering this. Rivkah, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, this kerosene thing as well. So my husband tells the story of how his mother would douse their hair in this kerosene. He doesn't remember the particulars, how long it was kept on or what was going on. However, his sister has this really beautiful, long, blonde, curly hair, and his mother would chop it all off when the lice got too bad, in addition to this kind of kerosene thing. So she told me stories about the trauma, the emotional, psychological trauma of going to school and being called by her brother's name, and the teacher saying, with your hair like in this boy's cut, you look just like your brothers. You don't even look like a girl anymore. And I think it's important to maybe put a little red underline under these events in our history, especially now when we're looking at issues like transgenderism, confusion about gender, and the biblical prohibitions on dressing in the opposite gender's clothes and this sort of thing. And then thinking about those stories where, the girls looked like boys and this was part of the treatment. To come back to the Shoah, which wasn't actually covered, that was actually the excuse for why our people were shaved, is that they were full of lice. Of course, lice being parasites, as parasites often do, they feed on people who are having nutritional deficiencies and malnourishment, which our people did during the Shoah, of course. And so we were much more susceptible to lice than someone who was properly nourished. I want to give another kind of little anecdote here about a friend of mine that she had consulted me about a condition that her daughters were experiencing, and it was kind of a long-term chronic issue. And one of the things that I recommended to her was high-dose vitamin C. So for anyone who's taking notes, this would be the time to take it. And I'm just going to quickly mention, but not go into detail. We can discuss it maybe in the Q&A a little bit more if we want, but I recommended specifically the vitamin C bonded to sodium. So sodium ascorbate, which is not available in Israel. In Israel, it's ascorbic acid or calcium ascorbate usually. And so they were kind of on this, some low-end high dose of vitamin C for some months to deal with this issue. And not only was the issue dealt with, and I'm not saying what the issue is, and I'm not saying that vitamin C is a panacea. That's not what I'm saying. So please don't walk away from this. Rivkah Asoulin said vitamin C cures all ailments. I never said it. That didn't happen. But anyway, one thing that she did note was this was the first time in her life that her daughters, who have thick, beautiful, curly hair, were lice-free for the duration of that time that they were taking the vitamin C. And this mother attributed that to the vitamin C. So and again, I'm not saying that vitamin C is a cure for lice. That is not what I'm saying, but I'm just drawing this situation to your attention as well, that if there's a known connection between parasites and malnourishment and vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And here a mother was observing that this particular vitamin, when the children were no longer deficient, they were no longer hosts for lice. So that's our first gold nugget. At any rate, the shaving of lice during the Shoah was a humiliation ritual. Really, it was part of the dehumanizing. I mean, our hair is, there's not a lot of creatures on earth that have this hair that's beautiful and they can style it and braid it. And, Chava's got her horses, so I'm sure she objects. But, there aren't a lot of creatures on earth. Hair is very humanizing. It's kind of unique to humans, and doing our hair, and we cover our hair as women once we're married, and men cover their hair, their heads, to remember that there's one above. Like there's a lot of Jewish significance and spiritual significance. And shaving it is in some ways dehumanizing. In fact, and I don't want to go into a big discussion, but for some ultra-Orthodox sects, the women are required to shave their heads at marriage. A lot of different reasons are given, very beautiful, esoteric, lots of reasons, and I'm not talking about those, so no tomatoes or hate mail necessary. I just want to draw a parallel to the topic at hand, which is shaving the hair kind of making someone dehumanized or less attractive. And one of the reasons that's given for some sects of why they shave the woman's hair is so that they will be less attractive in the event that, you know, in the pogroms of Eastern Europe, that if they were trapped, they would be less likely to be raped if they didn't look so beautiful and have this beautiful hair. If they were kind of bald, they looked less like a woman. And so there is kind of this theme about potential trauma in shaving or shearing the hair, especially of a girl, the psychological impact or trauma that can be possible. I'm not saying Haredim who do this are traumatized necessarily. They have a different culture. They have lots of reasons. They're raised to this. Rivkah is not drawing that parallel either. But I'm just trying to pull in some different elements. I hope everyone understands what I'm saying that need to be examined, particularly if you're not in a community that does that, or if someone is shaving the hair for a reason of being infested with lice, which is certainly not a simcha like getting married or something of that nature. So the way that this has been dealt with that kerosene, with the shaving, these have a psychological component that's very dangerous for Am Yisrael, dangerous for our children, dangerous for this generation, and another reason to really avoid, I think, or really think twice before making that kind of move. Some more thoughts?
Yeah, so I would like to, first of all, I wanted to mention, I'm just going to dive right in. So I mentioned that, you know, lice have been with us since biblical times. And actually, recent archaeological discoveries have found an ancient Egyptian remedy for lice, which was date meal. So what is date meal? What is meal? You know, usually when we say cornmeal or something meal, we think of flour. And yes, meal is kind of flour. However, it's often the whole plant or the whole fruit, including the seed. So date meal likely included the date seed as well. And date meal could also, or any meal, could be mixed with oil. So this date meal could have been mixed with some kind of an oil. And I'm just going to dive straight in because, you know, we're all sitting on the edge of our chairs and like, okay, we got the history, we got some of the psychology. What do we do for these lice? So I also want to mention that, yes, there are different schools and theories and, you know, maybe, you know, more vitamin C or less, more vitamin Bs or, you know, this or that. At the same time, healthy people get lice. Kids get lice, babies get lice. Everyone can get lice. And so I really want to just go and dive in and share a personal stories, our lice story. And then from that, we can gather some things. So we had lice and we didn't get recurring. I think one of my kids did. He was the youngest and had the least amount of hair, which again breaks these urban myths that lice are attracted to long, thick hair. Lice are attracted, like Rivkah said, even in the Holocaust, to those who were shaven. They still got lice. So it doesn't matter what color hair you have and how thick, beautiful, or straggly it is, you can get lice. I covered my hair and got lice. Two of my kids, one of them who had beautiful, thick, long, and curly hair, didn't get lice, go figure. One of my sons, who just had regular short hair, didn't get lice. So, you know, when you look at these things, even in the micro environment of one family, but quite a large family, it seems like many other things. You know, some kids will get strep and some won't. Some members of a family might get chicken pox and one just won't, even after being exposed many times. So lice are no different, really. And so we're here to bust some urban myths. I'm going to carry on busting a few myths here, and some of them from personal experience as well. Lice are not attracted to dirty hair, believe it or not. When your hair is a little bit on the oily side, because we have natural oils in our scalp, thank you, Hashem, lice have a harder time attaching when the hair is slightly oily. So if you wash your hair with shampoo every single day, lice have an easier job of attaching to the hairs. So there's another urban myth out the window. There are so many home remedies that I won't even begin, but I could just say some of them are my favorite foods, like hummus trina, apple cider vinegar, black beans paste. Oh my gosh, the list goes on. So I think for a while in Israel, when I lived there back in the 80s, I think the kerosene stuff was being phased out. Hummus and trina was a really big deal then. You know, I remember girls would have it slathered on their heads and spices added in, and then they come in this kind of shower cap thing to school. Again, the shame, you know, the emotional component, and goodness knows. So I like to stick to eating trina and hummus and all of those things. And what I found most useful was something called neem oil. And I know that both Rivkah and Chava will probably discuss it as well, but I did a lot of research. I researched all the products on the market. And I'm going to tell you that even nowadays, you can actually, something very trendy in the US, I don't know if this has hit Israel yet, but schools here, parents don't like lice. Nobody likes lice. They're lice. So there are these companies that they come to your home, or they have salons, or they're in a salon, and you go and you get the whole treatment done, and they have these guarantees and everything. Or you can buy over the counter. There's two famous, well-known companies. I won't mention their names. And one of these companies I was actually in contact with said, oh, non-toxic. Can I get a list of your ingredients? No, but we use one of the derivatives of the pyrethrins. Pyrethrin is a non-toxic chemical compound. There's a few different names of them, supposedly derived from certain flowers in Africa, but most of it is synthetically made today. And while it is less toxic than a lot of other chemicals, there are, even on the boxes, and you will even be told, mild side effects. You could even Google it. The main one being burning and itch. Well, if you have lice and you just did a treatment, you're going to have a burning scalp afterwards. Not fun. A kid is never going to want that treatment again. And itching, you're going to think you have lice, or your mom's going to think you have lice when you come and say, my head's itching, my head's itching. It's one of the most common side effects of this medication. And guess what? Lice have become resistant because it's become a chemical. It's a synthetic chemical. And what about some of the inactive ingredients in these non-toxic, amazing products? Yes, there is one actually called piperonal butoxide, which I thought maybe is a derivative of pepper or something. But according to the EPA, it has supposed cancer-causing possibilities. So why would I want to put that on my head or my kid's head? When I read further, they say in the dose in these treatments, they're considered generally safe as long as not used in higher doses. I don't want that on my head or my kid's head. So neem it is. And neem is a plant. It grows in India from the family of the mahogany trees, believe it or not. It's really well known. And it is an amazing, amazing product from the point of view, and I'm going to stop and let you guys go on. I just get so excited about this. Neem is good for the skin. It's used for things like acne and eczema and chickenpox. And if you look up studies or uses in India, you'll have pages full. It is a commonly used plant product. There are so many neem products there. It's amazing. And it's used even with little ones on their skin, rashes and eczema. And yet it is this supposed powerful, potent insecticide. It has the ability to destroy over 200 kinds of insects, including lice. And how it goes about this is it disrupts the reproduction cycle. So essentially, when you mix neem, which smells terrible, I have to put it out there, it smells terrible. Mix it with coconut oil, mix it with maybe an essential oil like rosemary, or put it in any conditioner that you like to use. And you're going to put it on the hair. And I'm going to give it over to Rivkah because she has a lot of experience with this, but I'm just going to say, Rivkah's going to show hers. These are the most effective tool for lice, period. So for us, this labor-intensive with oil, neem oil, literally took care of a whole family, and only one had some residual nits, which are the eggs, left over. Most of the products you have on the market today do not take care of the eggs. The lice have become resistant to them. And even the companies that give you a guarantee, they don't use one thing like neem oil and a comb. They have a whole package of products because the initial shampoo or wash or whatever they call it actually makes it harder to get the nits out because it really dries things and clumps things up there. So then you have to apply their conditioners and things like that so that you can actually get the nits out. Now, I am not bad-mouthing. There are amazing people and companies out there. All I'm saying is you can do this yourself. And Rivkah is going to tell you about the really precious moments that you can have with your kids when you do this labor-intensive work. Rivkah.
Well, I want Chava in here too, but neem, I want to say, just I'm going to put this out there, which is, so gold nugget number 2 is neem. Gold nugget number 3 is this comb and conditioner is actually all you need. That's all you need. Okay, so this Assy ASSY 2000 is like the best brand. So there you go, Lowell RA. There's my plug for something I really stand behind. That's what's used in Israel, although there may be other companies elsewhere. So I'm not saying this is to the exclusion of anything. I'm just saying this is the best that I'm aware of in Israel. And we have many of these in our house. As you can see, they are, the comb is, it's not like a normal comb. So I actually have talked with many parents. Many of them are Anglos who just they don't understand what combing means. They think a regular comb. A regular comb won't do anything. You know, these are bugs that are right above microscopic level. And so you need a comb that has no spaces between them. And this comb is made from metal. They used to be made actually from wood, as well as other materials that can be made from other things. Share a link for a comb. You need to look up the ASSY 2000. I don't have a link from the comb, but this is sold in most major pharmacies in Israel. Imitations don't do. They don't work. Each one of these metal bristles, I guess, is ridged. It has little ridges, and those ridges actually slice into the lice and help grip them and pull them out and grip into nits, which are the eggs. The eggs are kind of whitish and sticky-ish and can clump together. They'll be closer to the roots. And lice is often found, thank you for that link, you know, usually around the front area, okay, around the ears, front area. For some people, it's at the nape of the neck, usually not deep inside, but around the parameters of the hair. That doesn't mean you won't find it inside. It just What I'm saying is it's most typically found in these areas, okay? And we did talk a little bit about body lice. I just want to add that pubic lice is oftentimes just lice, the lice that's on your head. Why is that important to say? As annoying as lice on your head is, I've never had pubic lice, but I imagine it's way, way, way worse, like a billion times worse. And when you're getting lice out, obviously you would not want the lice falling into your pubic hair or creating a situation where that could happen, where you would actually spread the lice to your or your child's pubic hair, you know, for a budding teen or something like that, or if your child's checking him or herself as a teenager. So keep those things in mind. At any rate, this and conditioner is all you need, bottom line, and that's what we use. I'll add some other herbs and talk more about neem, but let's just walk through the process of this. So this is the biggest moment. Take all your notes. Thank God we all have large families and we've all been through it. So our lice process goes like this. My kids are homeschooled. They're not in school every day. So we make sure to do a lice check every time they've played with their friends. So if this is in the summer, you know, where they're playing with their friends almost every day, we're going to do a comb through every single evening before bed. Combing through should always be done on wet hair, not dry hair. It can be done in a shower. It can be done in a bathtub. Just being mindful of the pubic lice issue. Okay. But for some little kids, you know, they can get cold being out of the water or whatever. You want to make this an emotionally close and calm time for the family where they feel they're loved. They feel that they're valued. Their hair is valued. Their body's valued. No shame. And that this is something that a parent is going to help them with. We're going to work through it together. Don't worry, we can fix it. We can take care of it together. It's scary and it's upsetting, and you have parasites in your hair, you know, but we've got this. We can do it together. And so sitting in a warm bath might be helpful. So those are things to know. Okay, if there's a nit infestation, which I've never had, but if there's a lot of nits, it's often recommended to use apple cider vinegar, which has been diluted in water, as a rinse. So here's how that would look. The first thing I would do is, if my children need shampooed, and they don't need shampooed every day, and that's a personal family decision based on your hair type and your ideology and your, you know, what Gilla talked about, your natural oils, how much you want to preserve them. That's beyond the scope. But if they need shampooed, we'll shampoo as normal, rinse out all the shampoo, and then we get a good amount of conditioner. Obviously, for shorter hair or thinner hair, you need less, and thicker hair more. So I can't give you an exact amount. But you want to get the conditioner in the hair, and you'll take a brush, any type of wet brush that you typically use for your child, or a comb. And again, that brush will change. If you're dealing with curly hair, you might want a special brush for curly hair. You'll know what you use. And and by the way, curly hair should only be brush wet as well. So you'll brush through and run your fingers through the strands, make sure that everything's nice, silky, smooth, there's no tangles, and that's when you pull out the lice comb. And in the lice comb, I start at one side of my child's hair. So, you know, if you want, you could pull everything back in a rubber band and just take out one small, you know, section, like maybe a fourth of the total hair or whatever, depending on, you know, the child and whatever. And just start sectioning it off like they do at a salon. Well, they'll take the back of a comb maybe and just, you know, split some and get a thin strand, and you comb through. If there's a real infestation, a lot of lice, you may need to comb through at one angle, at the other angle. You might want to comb through underneath, going up. You know, you might want to comb through that one section in a lot of different angles. And every time you're done, you'll have a look at the lice comb. And if you catch lice, you can rinse them down the drain. Lice can move, like Gilla said, they don't live necessarily for very long outside of, you know, of the body or away from the host. However, they can move, they can jump, which we can talk about later, usually not as dramatically as some people think, but they can jump. So the best way to get rid of lice is to kind of rinse them down the drain. Not trying to crush every individual one or whatever, just rinse it down the drain, less drama, less hassle. And then you go to the next section, and you pull that aside in a ponytail, and you just start working at different sections one at a time. If you're having a lot of nits, or you're seeing a lot of nits, and maybe Gilla or Chava can speak to this because I've only seen it a couple times in my life, getting some apple cider vinegar diluted before you put the conditioner on, and just putting it as a rinse on the child's hair and letting it sit for a few minutes. Then you can add the conditioner to the bottom, kind of comb through everything. That apple cider vinegar destroys the bonds, that gluey bond that bonds the eggs to the hair shaft. And so it disintegrates it. And so it's easier to pull it out of the hair. And apple cider vinegar is known as a beauty treatment. So what I used to tell my kids is like, oh, it's so good for your hair, which it is. It makes hair shiny and silky. And it's a loving act instead of like, here's some kerosene and let's shave you, right? It's more loving and kind. So we go all the way around using the lice comb, and your work here is done for that evening. You may not catch everything. You probably won't, and that's okay. Here's another gold nugget. The life cycle of lice is about 9 days. That means that when you use this comb and you find nothing, you need to continue doing this for 9 more days to make sure that there's not, if you miss something, that life cycle will go on. And so maybe you missed a few nits. So in 2 days, you might see those lice, and you want to get them before they start reproducing and lay their own eggs. So that's really important. Even after you're done seeing the lice and nits, you're not done. However, when you're not seeing anything anymore, the process of going through the hair can go much faster. So during an infestation, I can spend an hour on a child, depending on how long the hair is and a lot of other things. Obviously, shorter hair will not take as long. Okay. But once I start seeing nothing, that same child could be 20 minutes, 10 minutes. It can go much faster. I can just kind of go through it because I know I'm not seeing anything. I'll do a few checks and then look just to make sure. And then even after that, I'll periodically, once a week, twice a week, just pull this out, and it's part of our nighttime, bedtime, shower ritual. So we stay on top of it that way. Okay, Chava.
Okay, so with our experience, I have only boys, thank God. And we went through a period with lice, but again, it was like, okay, let's sit down, and we comb them out. We have the same comb that you do. The kids actually liked taking a white piece of type paper, computer paper, whatever it is. And as we're combing and hitting the comb onto the paper, they come off. And then the kids, while we're combing, they're down there and they're crushing each one. It's like a very fun thing for boys to do. And that was our biggest thing, was the combing. Every day we would do it. I haven't seen that comb for years and years and years. And my youngest is 10. We did it to him maybe when he was very little. And since then, thank God, we haven't seen it. So I know I have a comb somewhere in the house, but we haven't had to use it. So I think part of this is when you use chemicals, however natural it might be, you're relying on the chemical to kill off the lice. Of course, it does not touch the eggs. So people think, oh, I did the treatment and I'm all done. No, the eggs are still there and they will hatch, and then you'll have another cycle of lice, and you'll be like, well, I thought I did everything. And as soon as those lice hatch, they themselves start laying more eggs. So you have to go through the whole process of getting rid of those eggs. And the best thing is that comb. We have used neem before, but again, when you're using outside chemicals, I'm not talking about neem, but chemicals. So you're relying on these chemicals to kill them, whereas your body is just putting up with it, right? But if you don't use those chemicals and you go through the combing and shampooing and whatever it is that you want to do to continue helping to get rid of these things, your body is actually building up a tolerance, and it itself can start repelling them, which I believe is what we had, because again, I have 6 boys, army, friends, you name it. We haven't, thank God, had even one since that time. But back in the day, we did use neem. And again, I was in Sri Lanka. Everyone had lice, but it wasn't this crazy infestation that they had to go through to get. They use coconut oil like mad there. They wake up in the morning. These women have beautiful, long, black, thick hair, every single one of them. And they wear it up in a bun all day long. But in the morning, they get up and they just grease their head with coconut oil. It is a fashion statement. They love long, silky, oily, black hair. It's beautiful. But they still have a minimum of amount of lice, and we just go through and pick them all out every day. It's a fun little thing. But I believe that coconut oil really kept the populations down. And they had such beautiful skin and hair, and like beautiful people way, way out in these villages that have no access to anything else but lovely, lovely coconut oil. So that's a big one too. Neem oil, coconut oil. I've heard mayonnaise. Basically what you want to do is, like Gilla was talking about with the trina or the hummus, is you are suffocating the lice. They need to breathe. As much as they love blood, they also need to breathe. And when you suffocate them, however that might be, with going to be shampoo, soap, conditioner, something lathery and oily, and then put a shower cap on it for 20 minutes, right? And then rinse it out with your apple cider vinegar, however you want to take a shower. But that really kills them. And I've seen it in my animals as well. I will just lather them up. And lice and fleas, by the way, are very similar parasites, the same blood sucking, the same laying eggs on the individual hairs, the same life cycles, the same problem with when you get rid of all the fleas, you still have the eggs and you can't see them. And so I've done this many times with my children and then with my animals, and I've seen the same thing. You suffocate the lice or the flea, whatever, and then you wash them off, and then you have to continue doing it because the eggs, again, are still there. Some herbs that I can throw out there that are, I just know, aromatic herbs, how wonderful they smell to us. The bugs hate them. They just hate them. Thank God. God created this perfect system where we love it and they don't like it. So it repels them. It doesn't necessarily kill them, but it repels them from wanting to come onto the child, the person, the animal, whatever. So some of my favorites that I've used over and over would be Sheba, which is an Israeli wormwood. You can put the Latin names if you want. I'm not going to go through them. Rue, rosemary, sage, of course, and cinnamon. I always love, actually, for a hair herb. It stimulates the hair growth and where those little bugs are crawling around, and they really don't like it. And it's so, so good for hair and skin. So I'm going to stop there because there's more things, but those are my favorite herbs, I think.
Yeah, Artemisia arborescens, I think, is Sheba, which is yeah, it's an Artemisia, one of the like over 1,000 types, and it's called Sheba here. It's Moroccans use it as their wintertime tea, I believe. They do Nana for summer, I think, and Sheba for winter. I might have it backwards, but I think that's how it's done. And I just, neem is obviously an aromatic as well. It's a god awful smelling aromatic. I think it smells a bit like peanut butter. But neem is not native to here. And as an herbalist, I don't like being dependent on things that I have to import. I'm not saying I don't do it, I'm just saying, I don't want to be dependent on it. I don't want to feel like if I can't get my mail, if I can't get things, I don't know what to do. I have no recourse. So if I'm looking for an herb to repel, so say my kids have a major infestation, and I'm combing, and like I said, the comb and the conditioner is really all you need. Don't complicate things. It's non-invasive. There's no chemicals. There's no, you can do it over and over. Yeah, it's a drag to comb through your child's hair. However, they can be taught to do it on their own. And my children, my girls who are still young, are already doing it. They're already, at age 6 and 8, they're already starting to do it on their own. I want to add as well, just to hit the point home. One person came to me to tell me that the worst case of lice they had ever seen was in their newborn baby who was bald. So the other kids had it, newborn baby festering with it and was bald. So, important. Another client came to me about her mother, who was and is in her 90s, was at that time as well. And she said, we need some kind of herbal remedy. My mother has this like extreme itching on her head. It's maybe dermatitis or something like that. And after asking a few questions, I said, have you checked her for lice? And she's like, what are you talking about? She's 90 years old. She's not around small children. She's not around, sure enough, they checked her and she had lice. So, it doesn't matter your age. And this woman has like very sparse hair. There's like male pattern balding. There's female pattern balding as well as you age in the elderly population. So somebody with very kind of wispy, sporadic hair that was infested with lice. So please remember the babies and the elderly, if there's a lice infestation, to check them as well. And remember that they could be experiencing an infestation of lice. Okay, so for me, neem oil is out. It's too hard to import sometimes. I mean, it's become much easier. But rosemary, so anything in the mint family, which is typically an aromatic mint, and most mints are aromatic, not all. But sage and the mints, spearmint, peppermint, okay? But rosemary is a standout for repelling lice. And so what I'll do if there's a real infestation situation, or my girls are feeling like upset or really nervous about it, or feeling like some sense of like fear about having an infestation, that's a go-to for me. You can make, a rosemary infusion. So it's just like making a tea. You pour some boiling water over the rosemary that you find out in the garden. It's a weed here. It's used as an ornamental here. So you can typically find it almost anywhere growing, and if you don't have it, grow it yourself. And you can just take a sprig of it and pour some boiling water on it. You can pour that over the child's hair before they get out of the shower and just leave it on. Don't rinse it out. You can use essential oil. Essential oil is toxic and does have dangers beyond the scope of this talk today, but 1 drop is all you need. So sometimes I'll just put 1 drop and then I'll go and massage it on wet hair after my children come out of the shower, and just kind of massage it through the scalp. A very small 1 drop, which is diluted in wet hair for the entire scalp. It can also promote hair growth for people who are having hair loss, and it can also promote clarity of mental faculties for people who are feeling a bit foggy. That fogginess could be due to many different reasons. It could be from prolonged stress due to being in a war for almost a year. It could be lack of sleep due to fighter jets flying over your house every night when you try to go to sleep for almost a year, or rockets or gunfire that never ends. It could be breastfeeding moms that are up all night. It could be, a bout of insomnia or fear before a test, or something that's we're not getting the sleep that we need and we just need some more mental clarity. So look for times of, and that's also when we're more susceptible to lice, when we're kind of run down. So it might be kind of a kill 2 birds with 1 stone solution, the rosemary. Again, 1 drop is all you need. And you could always dilute that first in your hand in a little bit of coconut oil, just a little dime size amount. For people who don't know what a dime is, it's actually right about the size of my necklace. So very small, a little tiny small amount of coconut oil. You can put your 1 drop there, rub it between your hands and massage it into the scalp. We want to be really, really careful about using essential oils neat, because they are more likely to cause an allergic reaction, and built up over time. Even for someone who hasn't had an allergic reaction, it could be that the tolerance will suddenly break for that, and there'll be suddenly an allergic reaction. So we want to always work with diluted essential oils whenever we can. And herbal spray, and then I think maybe Chava can talk about the pillow thing, Chava and Gilla, which is important, but an herbal spray. And I just want to say that there is overlap with fleas here. So if you're dealing with a pet with fleas, that rosemary, a sprig of rosemary, that's, pour some apple cider vinegar over it, apple cider vinegar and water, let that sit for a few days. That would be a great spray for pets. Obviously, you want to avoid the eyes. But you can add other things that are local, like Inula viscosa, also called sticky flea bane. I know of its effectiveness. It's called sticky flea bane because it's known for being repelling fleas. However, since there are so many similarities, I quite imagine that sticky flea bane would be something to pull out in the case of lice as well, and could be helpful. It could be rubbing a pillow with it, or bedding, or other things. Clothing could also help. Same with rosemary. You can make a spray, an herbal spray, not only to spray on the hair, but just kind of even spray, on your pulse points, because we're repelling. We're just basically creating an aromatic situation that repels. But local plants, Inula viscosa is local, rosemary is local, all of the mints are local, inside a diluted apple cider vinegar, easy to do and good for you, and a bit of a beauty treatment that can help the person you're treating feel better. I think to wrap up, we should talk about the wools and linens and natural cloths, and washing bedding and that sort of thing.
We don't hear you, Gilla.
Before I hand it over to Chava, who is more the expert on wool and fabrics, I just wanted to mention that we don't need to, I'm here to break up all the urban myths. We don't need to go and wash the bedding every single day. You don't need to boil it. You don't need to bleach it. You don't need to disinfect it. If you're inclined to do so, you can put it in the dryer. You can hang, laundry outside in the sun. It will disinfect, or, no bugs are going to live in there. But essentially, if you keep in mind that a head louse will not survive more than a day, I don't know the exact amount of hours, supposedly 8, 9, 12, there's different schools of thought, theories, but essentially, they're not going to survive for days in a car seat, in the car. The other thing that we didn't mention that is supposedly helpful in treating lice as well is extreme heat. So if you live in South Florida or Israel, or pretty much anywhere in the summer, maybe except for Alaska, it gets so hot in your car from the sun. I am not too worried about that. I never washed the car seats, and we never had a reinfection issue. And I washed bedding normally. So, Chava will touch on the wool, but using natural bedding, and especially pillows where our face and breathing and head touches. Most of the oils, if you're using natural oils, will come out in the wash. It may take a few hot washes. You may need to put them in the sun. I use castor oil. Anyone who knows me, I'm the queen of castor oil. And I have linen and cotton bedding and sheets, and it washes out. There might be a stain there once or twice, a few hot washings, put in the sun, and it's no longer there. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, because part of what I did personally was I'm a little bit more of a lazy mother. So I did not do those combings more than a week after they were clean. And, I put neem oil in my daughter's favorite conditioner, my kid's favorite conditioner at that point. And it was more of like a maintenance, once or twice a week, leave it in for a while. But when there was the active infestation, I mixed the neem with the coconut oil or the conditioner, depending on the child, and then combed through and rinsed and used a blow dryer, because the blow dryer, the heat also makes it an in-hospital environment for the lice and the nits as well. So that is something important to keep in mind, although we also did overnight with the oil. And even if you put a shower cap on, you tie a bandana, no matter what contraption you have on, when we sleep, stuff comes off and there's going to be oil on the pillowcase. And so I just want to tell you that it does come out. Don't worry. If you have beautiful and fancy linen that you really care about, don't use that when you're doing a lice treatment. But I'm going to hand it over to Chava because she has sheep. So Chava is the expert on wool. I am obsessed with wool. I used wool diaper covers. I use wool mattress covers. I recycle old wool sweaters for leg warmers, and I make sole shoe inserts with wool. Felt it, use it. It's antibacterial. Okay, Chava, I'm giving it over to you because you are the real expert. Chava, please.
Okay, so one thing, when using the oil, castor oil, neem oil, coconut oil, whatever it is, and they go to bed, I will just lay a kitchen towel over the pillow, and then that helps any oils. It doesn't even touch the pillow. It just goes right on the towel. Another little tip. So like you're saying with the natural oils, I'm sorry, the natural materials is they are anti-everything bad. All good stuff, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-pests, whatever you call them, pests. So think about how many people today are walking around with all kinds of skin problems and rashes and who knows what, and we're all walking around in synthetic fibers. This does not repel anything. It doesn't even work with the skin, and it causes all kinds of trouble, and our skin cannot breathe. So when we're dealing with lice or some kind of pest like that we actually have to deal with on our heads, why not sleep like we once upon a time did in natural materials? Linen sheets, cotton sheets, pillowcases, okay? And then even the filling in our mattresses and in our pillows needs to be something that actually repels these pests. And it gives us an amazing energy for a good night's sleep, which we want to bring down the stress, right? We don't want to sit there and worry about it and itching all night long and have our kids be up all night long. These natural materials are amazing, and it's the way God created it. And people slept on these things with the sheets and the filling for hundreds and hundreds of years. And here we are today walking around and sleeping and rolling around in plastic, recycled, weird materials. It is so not conducive to getting rid of any kind of illness or pests. So I make wool pillows. That means they are stuffed with wool, natural cotton pillowcases. You could use linen. Wonderful, wonderful linen is so cleansing and repelling of bad things, amazing energies, not to mix the two. And silk, also silk. Rivkah was talking about silk. I've never used it, but it is, again, a natural material that repels pests and brings in this lovely, calming energy for sleep. So you can wake up the next morning and deal with whatever lice or nits or whatever are left over calmly and acceptingly and without trauma. So yes, those synthetic sheets and pillowcases and fillers, slowly, however we can do it, we need to get rid of them.
Beautiful. Typically we don't record the Q&A, but I'd like to today, if it's okay for everybody, because if you have some remedies or some tips or experiences, we can all learn from them. So I think it might be important to keep it going. And I'd like to open it up for Q&A if it's okay with everybody. Okay. Come on, mamas. You've dealt with this.
Everyone can unmute themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
on a learning curve. I'm on a learning curve and such that I'm just learning. I don't even know what to ask. I didn't know anything about these natural products like linen and wool being. I didn't know any of this. Everything I have synthetic. So, thank you.
I have a daughter with beautiful red curly hair, and she's like the lone curly headed person in our family. So I've had to learn a lot of things about caring for curly hair. And one of the things I learned about was silk. And so a lot of times you'll see women with curly or kinky hair, especially wearing a silk bonnet to bed. She doesn't like anything on her head and doesn't want to put anything on her head. So a silk pillowcase was a really great solution. It doesn't kind of tangle the hair and brat it up and get it to be all frizzy. It keeps things, pretty mellow. I wouldn't say perfect, but she's still little. So, but we've dealt with way less lice since we switched over to silk pillowcases. And like I wrote in the comments, you can get a silk pillowcase for $10 to $15. It's US dollars. It's not super expensive. I think we got ours on AliExpress. Not that I'm promoting AliExpress or anything like that. Go to wherever you're able to access this sort of thing. But any natural materials, and then I put nettlesandpins.com in the comments so that people can purchase wool, the wool pillows, or it's a pillow or the pillowcase, just the pillowcase or both? The pillow. Okay.
The wool filling. Yeah.
Okay. From Chava. And you can have access to that here and support Chava and support a local Israeli business and support Blue and White. Yeah, other thoughts?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Svea. Yeah, okay.
Hi,
So I
Svea.
was just gonna, hi. So I was just gonna add that basically I also found that combing was the only thing I really didn't like using the chemicals. And I would find that what I would do was I would comb every day until I wasn't finding anything. And then I would skip days because, I get tired of it too. And yes, since I knew that their life cycle was about 2 weeks, so then, it would taper out, and then I would check again after about 2 weeks just to make sure nothing had hatched. And usually that would do it. My daughter had the worst problem, and because she had long hair, so it was just harder to comb, so it was harder to find everything. I did at one point cut it shorter because it just got to be too much. But for her, I had found a recipe for rosemary oil, a teaspoon in a cup of water, and you put it in a spray bottle, and then I just sprayed her hair when we combed it each morning, and that seemed to help keep them off. And she now loves the smell of rosemary.
Were you using rosemary essential oil?
Yes, it was rosemary essential oil. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of like cooking it, like of making a like a tea of rosemary. Just wouldn't have thought of those things in those days. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm kind of surprised that I don't even remember where I got rosemary oil from, but I suppose I got it from somewhere in Jerusalem.
Yeah, rosemary is really like a wild weed in Israel. So rosemary essential oil was one of those few oils that even if you couldn't find it anywhere else, even the pharmacies were carrying it, and they still do.
Right, so that
super
might be.
farms.
They might have had it. Yeah. I mean, rosemary grows around, but we have rosemary bushes all over the place, but they spray them a
Exactly.
lot too. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
it. I
don't.
mean, that did it for me. I thought that's what I tell everybody I work in the health food store, so people come in and ask, and I always go, look, the only thing that really works is combing.
Yeah, I agree. That's the secret right there. And but I think people don't know how to comb. I think people I was listening to some families talk, And then what, some of the daughters came over infested with lice. And I said, well, my Abba takes a big brush and just brushes my hair every night
Oh.
when I take a bath, and he just brushes my hair. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that
you need
doesn't
the right
get the
comb.
lice out.
Right.
You need a special comb for it. And if you learn about like Middle Ages, I mean, you'll see like the aristocracy, that this was part of their nighttime ritual. They would have combs often made out of wood at that time, or maybe animal bone, and they would every night take turns, just like Chava talked about in Sri Lanka. They would take turns combing through each other's hair.
Yeah, I think also in China or somewhere, they had like these elaborate wooden combs. Yes, beautiful wooden combs. Yeah.
I have an elaborate wooden comb as a gift from Chava, actually, but it's not a lice comb, but I still use it every night because it's just wooden combs help distribute the oils, the natural oils, to the bottom of your hair. And so some of us grew up hearing about comb 100 times before you brush 100 times, or comb 100 times before bed. The idea behind that used to be from these wooden combs that would pull the oils from the scalp down so that your hair was nice and shiny and had lots of oil on it. I mean, also, if you look at some of the historical dry shampoos, because they did not shampoo their hair for those reasons, what Gilla was talking about is having the oils in your hair actually was a preventative against lice, because it made it harder for the lice to grip on. And so they would avoid using water and washing their hair, but instead they would use like blotting powders. And so the blotting powders were often like rice powder. It's really easy to make rice flour. A lot of people are using it in gluten-free baking right now. You just get some rice and a really good blender, like a Vitamix. I'll plug my Vitamix. I love it. I actually wrote a poem called Ode to a Vitamix. I hadn't written poetry in many years, but I wrote it the day I got the Vitamix. True story. But anyway, so Malky knows it. I sent it to her. But they would put the powder, they'd powder that rice and kind of put it in. You can see it would blot up the oils in their scalp. You can see it when you do it. It just kind of soaks it up, and they would just, kind of lightly put it in and comb it through. And yeah, it looked white at first or whatever, but eventually that kind of goes away and their hair looked clean, but was still oiled and nourished. If you remember, Revolution era France, first revolution, the powdered wigs, that sort of thing, the powdering of the hair when they were kind of switching from wigs to natural hair and using the powders. And you can add other things to powder. So it wasn't only rice, you could use flour, like wheat flour, you could use herbs, you could use things like ground up rosemary. Thank you, Sfia. Really, that's the best thing, the comb and the conditioner. And that sporadic kind of, I get nothing and then wait a few days and go again. I mean, it's so simple and it's so health promoting, so non-invasive, and it really works better than anything. No herbs necessary, which is great for kids with sensory issues and stuff. Anybody else? Any tips, tricks? Other people will watch this?
Well,
Okay.
I imagine we all have so many questions. I'm speak for myself. We don't know where to start. So we've taken some of them so far. Maybe this would be a good time to conclude the recorded section of the program and then
Great.
continue non-recorded with Rivkah and Cynthia and Sfia, who are here with you. So is that all right to conclude the recorded section now?
Yes, great.
So I want to thank Gilla, Rivkah, and Chava for another illuminating talk. Ancient Roots Mothering, Roots, Nettles, and Sage, especially in our troubled times worldwide. And times you don't have to be sick to get well. Even the times are troubled. We should all be well, but especially now with so many systems, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, under assault worldwide. From my own personal view, that's part of the ended the era of Rav and Amalek, the pure spin cycle of the wash. That's the way I look at it, and then the evil will burn itself out and be destroyed. But that didn't happen yet. So I want to thank Gilla and Chava and Rivkah for talking about these practical problems we have to deal with. And I hope nobody out there puts gasoline in their children's hair anymore. So shalom from the Lower Galilee, the Northern Negev, Boca Raton, and from Jerusalem. And see you in a month before Rosh Hashanah. All
Wow.
right. So we stop.